Blast off! For the most wonderful science fiction fun and adventure a boy or a girl or a grown-up ever enjoyed. Meet
ML Elric and Sean Windsor
as they encounter the fierce Martians. It's so exciting, so amazing, you'll want to tell all your friends about that wondrous day when Red-Faced Santa meets the green-faced Martians. You'll see it all when Joseph E. Levine presents
The Soul of Detroit.
You asked interrogative question around my shoe. It's gone.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric, and I'm not really here. None of us are. We're on vacation, but we wanted to share with you.
I changed my shirt for this so people would think that it was a new week.
It's the mystery of TV. It's magic. It's TV magic. And you only know you're getting some TV magic if you're a soulmate, which we encourage all of you to become by donating just $5 a month or more. You can do more. If you do $500 a month, you can sit in the studio. Or if you do $500 one time, but we really prefer the $500 month thing. Anyway, we give our soulmates bonus episodes. And what we've done here, because most people can't see some of our finest work, we've put together 2 of those bonus episodes, and we hope you can feel the burn, because we have Scott Burnstein talking about the mob in Detroit, and Neil Rubin talking about a basketball player who tried to pull a caper that he had no reason to think he could get away with, and many other epic stories from his glorious career at the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News. And of course, the other reason we're able to come back week after week is Luke Nowacki. And if you can't decide if a vocalist is a member of a group or not, or you believe that your glove box is the correct storage place for your birth certificate, should you really be trusted with something complex like preparing your investments to provide for you and the rest of your life? When you sober up enough for your phone to recognize your face and unlock, call Luke Nowacki at 248-663-4748. That's 248-663-4748. He did the math, and Led Zeppelin is clearly a 4-piece, and Green Day is a 3-piece. And Mark, you know what happens if you call Luke?
What's that?
He'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. Member FINRA-SIPC.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc.
You will not be disappointed this week, because this is a man who is in demand. He's on lots of lists because people want to hit him, and not, like tap him or anything like that, or maybe punch him in a tunnel in the stadium or something like that, because he is Detroit's preeminent expert on the mob. He's on the board of the Mob Museum in Las Vegas, and he's here to tell us about the mob in Detroit, because I know about the Purple Gang, and I know about Young Boys Incorporated, and I know about White Boy Rick, and it all feels like it's so long ago. But Scott Burnstein says the mob in Detroit is alive and, well, or just kind of hanging on. Scott, what's the status of the bad guys in Detroit? And, I didn't mean bad guys. I meant people who are misunderstood, who live outside the economy. Don't put me on a list. I don't need to be on that list.
People ask me this all the time, and, does the mafia still exist, whether it be in America or a specific city? If we're talking about Detroit, it still exists. It's different. It's evolved. It's not what it was at its peak in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but you evolve or you die, and these guys have not died out. They're still pretty formidable in what they do. They're, very stealthy and very shadowy, and they make a lot of money in a lot of white collar rackets as well as the traditional street rackets. And there's a reason that you don't hear about them or see them is because they don't want you to hear about them or see them.
Now, Scott's coming to us from Las Vegas, and Vegas, if I understand correctly, kind of got its start because of Detroit, right? The Purple Gang, a Jewish mob in Detroit, eventually decided to go out to Vegas or got muscled out, or what happened? I mean, I know there was Meyer Lansky and some other guys, Chicago and all that, but didn't the Purple Gang have something to do with Vegas kind of jumping off?
Yeah, there were some old Purple Gangers that were some of the early investors in,
like Prince,
the original Las Vegas casinos. So yeah, you could trace a lot of the birth of Las Vegas and the growth of Las Vegas to Detroit, but also to New York and Chicago and Kansas City and Milwaukee, Cleveland. So it was a joint effort. But yeah, the Purple Gang were Detroit's Jewish mob during Prohibition. Actually, my family, it's my bloodline. The Burnstein brothers were the leaders of the Purple Gang: Abe, Joe, Ray, and Abe, Joe, Ray, and Izzy. Abe was Detroit's only Jewish godfather, and he lived at the penthouse of the Book Cadillac Hotel until the day he died in 1969.
Wow. And back then, I imagine it was kind of the standard stuff, right? Bootlegging, prostitution, loan sharking, what have you. What does the mob do to get by now?
Well, it's the traditional street rackets, bookmaking, loan sharking, extortion, a lot of drugs, a lot of white-collar racketeering, sanitation, construction. Lately, they've, not surprisingly, if you're in my line of work and you have my line of thinking, not surprisingly, they've gotten involved in the gray areas of the legal marijuana trade. There's kind of been a new way to shake people down through legal marijuana growing and dispensing. You can find people that have licenses and basically just go in. If someone's got a license to grow 25 plants or whatever, you can go in and say, we're taking 10 of them.
Jeez. What about cyber crimes? I mean, we hear about cyber crimes all the time, and it's usually, Korea or China. I mean, what does the mafia do regarding cyber crimes? Well,
Detroit's always been a very sophisticated group, an incredibly elite, exclusive. They've kind of been considered the Harvard, the Ivy League of
really, all right,
of the mafia. So they've always been very diversified and into the boardrooms and white collar rackets. The Detroit family is the only family that has a mandate of education for what became the second and third generation guys. If they were told from the first generation, the founding fathers said, if you guys want to, talking to their sons and nephews and grandsons, they said, if you want to come in to the family business, you have to go to college. You have to go get a business degree or an accounting degree.
Where'd they go? What was the university of choice?
So the longtime Detroit mob, what you would consider the CFO, the chief financial officer, went and got an accounting degree from Syracuse.
Oh, all right.
Another high-ranking mobster was a war hero, got a Purple Heart in World War II, and then went to Notre Dame.
Oh, wow.
A lot of the Detroit guys actually went to the University of Detroit.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Yeah.
So who is is there one family that runs Detroit? I mean, is Detroit a closed city? I mean, what's the hierarchy like?
The crime syndicate's always been the Toco-Zerilli crime family. It was founded by Black Bill Toco and Joe Zerilli in 1931. They led the family into the 70s, and then passed the torch to their sons, who ran the family into the last 10 years. And then over the last 10 years, it's passed to the Jackalonis, who had always been the pit bulls, the junkyard dogs, the guys that were boots on the ground, street level type stuff. And
the soldiers.
They got the reign. They got the power now.
Now, we're talking to you in this week's episode about Jimmy Hoffa, and when you hear the Hoffa stories, the name Giacalone comes around. Is that the same family? I mean,
same Giacalone.
Okay. And so did they move up since the 70s? I mean, were they kind of the muscle and now they're in the C-suite?
Yes, they were kind of assembly line workers, and then they went to kind of foremen, and now they're officially in the executive suite.
Now, Mark had asked about cyber crimes. Are these guys doing these scams like I'm a Nigerian prince, or hey, if you give me your bank account, I'll be able to make sure that nobody hacks into your Social Security?
No, I don't know so much about that stuff. A lot of the bookmaking has gone online.
Okay.
So where if you're going to a traditional street bookmaker, they'll send you to a website that's connected to offshore bookmaking operation. So just in the last 10 years, there was a bust in Macomb County related to that stuff, actually emanating out of the, in my opinion, the best Italian restaurant in Detroit, Luciano's. But they took a bust at that restaurant for running gambling out of the back of it and for driving people to a website to illegal gamble, and a couple people had to go to jail. Luciano himself actually was indicted in that.
So
R.I.P.
Not so lucky Luciano then.
But I would think that
Luciano was his first name. The guy who owned Luciano's.
Legalizing gambling though must have just taken a massive hit. No, not at all.
I mean, it did to a degree, but people that are of the theory that taking the gambling and drugs and taking it from legally from the black market to the open market, it's a fallacy to think that gets rid of the black market.
Oh,
the black market actually adapts and grows.
Yeah, they don't have to pay the tax on it, so it's going to be cheaper. Right. But I would just think, I guess maybe you're making the pie bigger by making gambling legal, but still, you would think some people that use bookies.
It definitely takes I'm not saying it doesn't take a slice out of it. It definitely does, and this is something that the Detroit guys have been preparing for since the 80s.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of FBI reports that I've gone over and talked to people, and starting in about the mid 80s, the Detroit mob started to prepare for what would happen 30, 40 years later.
Well, I'm sure they saw some of it. One of the first big things were Native American casinos. Did they worm their way into some of the casinos, the actual brick and mortar casinos?
Detroit didn't, but their counterparts in Chicago did. And there was a big case out of Chicago in the 90s about them muscling in on a Indian reservation out in California.
In terms of politics and things like that, do we see? I think of those classic stories where the mob is protected by all the politicians that the boss has in his pocket.
A very strong yes, especially in Detroit. Detroit is immersed in the judicial system, law enforcement, politics. I don't want to go into the Kwame stuff because that's your purview. But I know from an FBI source of mine that they caught a pretty prominent Detroit mob guy with Kwame on a wire. They weren't talking anything illegal, so it wasn't. They didn't catch an illegal conversation, but it shows you how close to the mechanisms of power they were.
Damn, I didn't even have time to say get the bell ready. We looked at a lot of text messages where Kilpatrick and Christine Beat and others would talk about the Godfathers. They seem to be, like a lot of young bums thought it was very romantic. But
yes.
Do you think that his conversations with this mobster were more like a dalliance or just a curiosity, or do you think it was let's get to know you and see what we can do with this?
I honestly don't know. I know that the administrations before, well, I guess one of the administrations before Coleman Young, I know was very mobbed up. I can say that with confidence. He was connected to the African American drug dealing scene, but he was also connected to the Italian mafia scene.
And what did they get from Coleman? What did he give them?
Contracts, access,
Okay.
shakedown money. It ran the gamut. But, Billy Giacalone and a lot of those Giacalone crew guys were tied into Coleman.
And you said that law enforcement and judges are tied to them. Any I got my pen ready. Any names you can share with us?
I don't want to name anybody, but I can talk about a situation, and then if you want to go look it up, I guess you could go look it up. The most recent, hardcore mob prosecution in Detroit. And when I say that, I mean where there was violence. Took place about 15 years ago. The case started in Macomb County, and it was against the Dana brothers, Joe and Mimo Dana. Joe Dana is one of the allegedly one of the leading figures in the current mafia landscape here. He's Sicilian. He comes from Sicily. He had a lot of family that was here. All the Detroit mob traced their roots to one town in Sicily called Terracini. And Detroit's mob is even more insular than other mobs around the country, to the point where if you weren't from Sicily, you weren't getting a button. You weren't coming into the Detroit mob. Other cities, you could be from anywhere in Italy and you were eligible. In Detroit, it's like if you weren't from Palermo, within Palermo, Terracini, it's a difficult time making your way into the mob, into the corridors of power. But the Danas, even though they lived in Terracini for the first quarter to half of their lives, their great uncle was a very prominent Detroit mob guy named Anthony Dana, who they called Tony Cars. He was the longtime representative to the auto companies. Had a relationship with Henry Ford back in the day. And the Dana brothers owned a string of Italian restaurants called Tiramisu. And at their flagship Tiramisu on 23 Mile out in Shelby Township, a competing Italian restaurant opened right next door.
Ooh.
They went over there and told the guy that he either had to shut down or pay them a tax. He told them to get lost, and they went in there with baseball bats and almost killed the guy.
Wow.
Put him in the hospital for a month. They were charged with attempted murder out of Macomb County. Somehow that case got pled down to a simple assault, and they had to do about 6 months in the county jail. The feds were upset with the way it went down in Macomb County. They believed that there had been some type of corruption, and they came behind them a couple years later and hit them with a RICO case based on that same assault. They were convicted on that, and Joe Dana had to go do a couple years in prison. But
did they get any of the judges or cops in that?
To me, sorry, go ahead.
Did they get any of the judges or the cops in that if they weren't happy?
They didn't get that particular judge.
Okay.
But I believe the entire Macomb County corruption scandal probe over the last handful of years is all connected at some level to the Toco-Zerilli crime.
You're talking about what, Hackle or
everything that's come out of Macomb
Eric
County
Smith?
in the last Eric's, all that stuff.
Yeah, Tony Morocco and the waste hauling, was it Rizzo?
Yeah.
You think that's related to the Danas?
Yeah. I didn't say the Danas. I'm just saying the Detroit mob as a organization.
Well, one of the things we used to hear with the Macomb County corruption, the one that made so many headlines, was that that Tony Morocco used to like to act like he was a mobster, kind of profile, like, hey, D's and Do's and all that other stuff.
Right.
But maybe he wasn't really a mobster. He just played off the stereotypes of, you're an Italian guy named Tony.
Behind them.
Okay, so you think he was connected somehow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unwillingly or willingly?
I don't think it was unwilling.
Okay.
Yikes. Okay. Well,
but I would say this is all just my opinion and conjecture, and I don't want to, put this in and say this is, nobody from organized crime, from the organized crime group has been charged in those corruption charges, but my sources tell me that they are in the queue.
Yeah, you don't want to lose your table at Luciano's. I imagine when you go there, you sit with your back to a wall so you can watch the door. Okay. And does somebody taste your food before you have it, or
no?
So how does that work? This is a mobbed up place, you say, and people probably know you, and they probably
everybody in the Detroit mob knows me. They've known me for the last 20 years. Opinions vary.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking pretty openly about some of this. Why do they let you live?
I mean, you could argue that it's good PR.
I mean, is some of this ego that's like, hey, Scott tells our story. Scott's a good guy. As long as Scott doesn't tell the wrong story, Scott.
I think there's some of that. I don't know how much of it is like, oh, he's a good guy. I think they see a means to an end. Some of them don't like it. The Tocos have a big problem with me.
Yeah,
and they have since my first book came out in 2007. Jack Toco, the longtime godfather, I'm told, sent his kids and not his kids, I think his grandkids, he told them to go into Barnes & Noble and Borders and take my book and hide it.
It seems kind of like a low-level crime. I mean, you didn't even steal it.
I know. I was going to say, have them buy it and then just buy them all.
Just put it in the fiction section. Put it in the fiction section.
That's what I was told that he told them to do. Go take it from the true crime section or the Detroit section and go put it somewhere where people aren't going to see it.
Wow. I understand that turned out to be a gateway crime, and after that, they started putting garbage in their recycling bin. And from there, what's next?
But I think I've been able to develop really good sourcing in the Toco-Zerilli crime family over the years. I've been able to interview and sit down with numerous made guys, capos, bosses. So I've been fortunate.
So I've had to call people who have been in trouble, who were indicted or were under investigation, or because of my reporting, it looked like they may have broken the law. And it can be a very tense moment to call somebody and say, hey, I think we're going to report that you're a total piece of shit. Can we sit down and talk about it, please? Mm-hmm. Those are usually people who are involved in some sort of white-collar crime. What's it like when you call somebody, or do you call them and just say, hey, it's Bernie here. I need to talk to you about those guys you whacked. Can we get together?
It's not that straightforward, but
how does that work? Tell us.
I always like to get face-to-face with people. I found that when you get out from behind your laptop and you get on their level and talk to them and listen to them, it goes a long way. I've had a lot of people that have, after I've sat down with them, have said, I had a different perception of you before this conversation, and now, not necessarily that they think I'm a great guy, but I think they have a certain level of respect. Some of them are just going to always be adversarial. I've had a lot of conversations where it's, they're trying to feel you out, meaning me. Like, how do I know what I know? Does the government know what I know? What I always say is when people say to me, like, does the FBI know this? And I say, buddy, believe me, if I know this, the FBI knows this.
Yeah. So how do those, so let's say you sit down with somebody and he says, like, hey, listen, Scott, I know you're going to do this story on me killing this guy, but the thing is, he didn't show me respect. So you got to understand, right? He didn't show me respect, so he's got to die, right? We're good? And you're like,
Well, I've never, other than the Hoffa case, I've never really reported much about, well, that's not true. I've reported a lot about Detroit mob murders in terms of history. I've written a ton on it. But in terms of like open and active investigations in terms of homicide, really, the Hoffa case is the only one in Detroit that I've dealt with. So it's not like I'm calling guys and being like, you might be eventually indicted for murder. So let's talk about your role in that murder or what. I'll just give you an example of one of the meetings I had about some stuff that I'd written. A guy that died last year. He was the reputed consigliere of the Detroit mob. His name was Peter Toco.
Yeah, I heard he fell on 700 bullets or something. It was accidental death.
He died of cancer.
Oh, okay.
They called him PT or Black Pete or Petey Specs. And I had written about him and his history. He had taken a racketeering conviction, a RICO conviction in 2006, and had to go to prison. And his son, who's around my age, who I actually played basketball against in high school, he was indicted as well. I don't believe he had to do any prison time, but he was indicted for running a sports book with his dad. And I had written a couple things about Pete and mentioned how his son had been indicted with him. And kind of after the first one or two stories, I would reference that. And Pete Toco called me to a meeting with his attorney. And he said this politely. And he said, my son, when he goes for job interviews, people Google this and they see, would you mind, you can leave the first story up that talks about him being arrested but all the other stuff, would you mind, taking down? And I did.
You did. Why did you take it down?
I didn't find like it was,
because it's hard to type with no fingers.
A guy like little Pete Toco, he wasn't a major player. I'm told that he's totally legit now. He was a kid that was, running around with his dad, booking bets. I felt like as long as it was, on the record, on my web magazine, in the newspaper, with the newspaper I was writing for at the time, that was enough. I didn't need to keep belaboring the point.
So he's not applying for jobs to kill people. It's not like somebody calls
Pete,
and says,
I was told,
hey, he says he didn't kill anybody. He says, yeah, you did. You know what's going on here?
Well, little Pete Toco was never suspected in any mob murders. Pete Toco, the one who died last year, was a suspect. He was never charged or convicted, but was a suspect in several gangland homicides.
Going back to the whole history of the mob in Detroit, we referenced the Purple Gang. Why did they disappear? Why did the one family take over? Because aren't mobs usually like a little bunch of little families and then someone ends up winning? Like, what happened there?
Well, there is a fallacy out there, and it's not just local. It's, some of the best national mob writers have fallen into writing about a war that never happened between the Purple Gang and the Italians. The Purple Gang and the Italians were allies and closely associated, and all of them were very good friends. Abe Burnstein, who was the godfather of the Jewish mob, was a pseudo consigliere, in the last decades of his life for Toco-Zerilli and Black Bill Toco. So there was a tremendous amount of respect. What happened with the Purple Gang was they all made fortunes in bootlegging, and half of them just tapped out after Prohibition and took that dirty money and went to try to clean it up.
I thought you couldn't get out of the mob. I thought you're not allowed to leave.
The Jewish mob is different than the Italian mob. The Italian mob is the one that you take the oath to, and you can, once you come in, you can never leave. That's different than what the Purple Gang was.
Damn.
So the Purple Gang, the legacy of the Purple Gang, the mythology. I mean, it's like people still ask me today, who's in the Purple Gang? It's like the Purple Gang has been gone since 1935. It was a group that existed from about 1925 to 1935, and then they were pretty much sold to the Italian mob. It wasn't contentious. They were kind of absorbed, and the Jewish mobsters came underneath the Italian banner. And maybe not so ironically, the guys that were experts at bootlegging alcohol in the 20s became experts at smuggling drugs later on.
Makes sense.
And why purple? Why'd they pick the Purple Gang? Why aren't they
was
the Magenta Mob or something? The Crimson Crew.
Purple's royal.
It was a situation where there was a Detroit, I believe it was a Free Press article. It might not have been, it might have been another newspaper, but I'm pretty sure it was a Free Press article from the 20s, where they sent a reporter to the Purple's old neighborhood on the east side, and they interviewed a shop owner who had been burglarized by the Young Purples, and they made quite an impression on this shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper told the newspaper, "Those boys are all tainted, like, off color, like purple meat."
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that reporter kind of ran with it and called them the Purple Gang, and then the mobsters themselves embraced the moniker. And a couple years later, during what became known as the Cleaners and Dyers War, where the Purple Gang tried to consolidate all the dry cleaners in the city and shake them down for a street tax, they would go into dry cleaning businesses that wouldn't pay the tax, and they throw purple ink on all the clothes.
I got you. And you mentioned the Jewish mob, Sicilians, Italians. What about the Irish? What about Mexican? What about black? I mean, are they organized as well? Do they have a presence here? Do those ethnicities have a sort of a mob profile in Detroit?
Not so much the Irish, but definitely down in Southwest Detroit, there's a number of Mexican street gangs, Mexican mobs. Detroit, as the Italians with the Toco-Zerilli crime family, they've always been a very inclusive group. We hear about diversity, equity, inclusion a lot now in our politics, and the Detroit mob, the forefathers were all about diversity and equity and inclusion 100 years ago. And that's an outlier for the way that most mobs and most Italian mobs throughout the United States would operate. They would be they wouldn't want to do business with African Americans or Jews, or in the case of Michigan here, Middle Easterners. But in Detroit, there's always been a place for anybody that can make the money, and you can rise pretty high as a non-Italian member because they respect anybody that can put money in their pockets. And there's been a lot of Jewish guys, Middle Easterners, and African Americans that have become very influential members of Italian organized crime without being Italian, because of their ability to be cash cows.
Meritocracy in the mob. Talk about something you don't expect to learn here today.
But in terms of African American organized crime, more recently, is the Black Mafia family, which is a shameless plug. I work on the television show on Stars, and there's a TV show and a companion docuseries. And that's based on the real life Black Mafia family, which was started in Detroit in 1990, and then eventually expanded around the country when they were indicted in 2005 in Operation Motor City Mafia. It was the biggest domestic drug dealing crew in American history. 200 members of Black Mafia family were indicted. They were all convicted, and they are icons, to say the least.
So, Scott, before we let you go, and I mean that like you're not in trouble, we're going to let you go. It's not like you're tied up or anything. Tell folks, where can they find your work and where can they meet you?
So my daily reporting is on the Gangster Report. It's my web magazine at www.gangsterreport.com. And I report on, modern day underworld activity in all of North America. And it focuses on the Italian Mafia, outlaw biker clubs, and African American drug dealers. So you can get that, and then we do a lot of history deep dives as well. But anything that's going on, day to day, you're gonna get it, as well as a lot of great exclusive source things about promotions and demotions and welcome home parties and stuff like that.
I understand
and
a
then-
subscription is you lend them $1, but they owe you like 30, and if they don't pay you back at the end of the year, you take a leg or a knee.
And then my podcast, which is on all available platforms, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, is called The Original Gangsters Podcast. And we've been up and running. Altogether, we've been up and running since 2019. We've only been in multimedia since about 2023. So it's been about 2.5 years of videos and 6 years of episodes altogether. We got a great backlog. We touch on everything. We get guests that are mobsters, mob busters, prosecutors, FBI agents, retired mobsters, sometimes a current mobster, and we have a good time with it.
Real quick, favorite mob movie and least favorite mob movie?
Well, I mean, my Goodfellas is a perfect film, in my opinion.
Yep.
Least favorite mob movie, it's a no-brainer, The Irishman.
I knew you were going to say
that. Travesty.
Yeah.
The most realistic mob movie, though, is Donnie Brasco.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, with
the scene with Al Pacino taking a
Johnny
hammer
Depp.
and trying to get a parking meter open. That's the mob. It's not what you see in Sopranos or Goodfellas or Godfather. That's the 1%. The 99% are guys that can't rub two nickels together and are trying to break into parking meters.
Well, hey, Scott, we appreciate you making the time, getting us caught up on the mob, hopefully not getting us in any trouble. You can check him out at gangsterreport.com. Check out the Original Gangsters podcast. And then if you want to see him somewhere, keep tabs on ogmediaevents.com. Scott, stay safe.
Thank you, ML.
Our friend and eminent journalist, Eminent Grise, I think they would say now, because he's been around a little while, but still not that gray. I don't know what's going on over there. It may be his secret. Neil Rubin, and I want to start Neil off. I've asked him to look back on his career and tell some of his favorite stories. And I want to tell you one that I read when I was an intern at the Detroit Free Press back in 1991, when Neil was covering some stories he'd done before, or some stories the Free Press had done before. And this one, I think, is one of the funniest stories I think I've ever heard of. And it involved a rather tall gentleman who was well known as a basketball player who tried to rob a local store where he was well known. And he went in there wearing a ski mask. And when he robbed them, they said, "Hey, Larry," or whatever it was. He says, "I'm not Larry." And they said, "Of course it's you." Neil, do you remember that story?
Oh, it's this classic, tragic, comic Detroit character named Reggie Harding.
Okay. You do remember.
Oh, absolutely. He was all-world at Pershing High School, I think it was Pershing, went, signed to play at University of Detroit before it was Detroit Mercy. I don't think he ever actually played there, wound up in the NBA anyway, but poor Reggie was just trouble everywhere he went, and he did exactly that. He grew up on the east side of Detroit, and in an area now that is just horrendous. And he actually lived on Harding Street, was not named after him. But for some anniversary of his death, I went there a few years ago, and, I'm not afraid in Detroit. I like it here. I'm comfortable here. I've never really even been edgy. That was the one time I didn't even put my car in park. I'm looking at his old house. I'm looking at some other stuff. I just had my foot on the brake in case I needed to scram in a hurry. But anyway, so this is Reggie's background. And he was 7 feet tall, incredibly talented, and just a messed up bad guy. And yes, he did exactly that. He robbed the neighborhood party store, and with like a ski mask or a nylon over his head, waving a gun around. And the proprietor said, "Cut it out, Reggie." Because there just weren't that many 7-footers in the neighborhood. And Reggie says, "It ain't me, man."
Guilty right there.
And at another point, The police arrested him for something. He somehow escapes from police custody, shows up like a week later with gunshot wounds in each leg. Reggie was just a disaster, and ultimately picked a fight with the wrong guy at that same party store. Slapped a guy, and I was going to say a smaller guy, but everybody's a smaller guy.
Yeah, when you're 7 foot tall.
Yeah, and then was sitting out on the stoop of a dry cleaner a couple of doors down, call it half an hour later, and the guy walked up behind him and shot him, and that was the end of Reggie.
Did they ever make a positive ID on that liquor store robbery?
No, remains one of the great mysteries of the age.
Oh, boy, what's Crime Stoppers? I may have a lead on that. Is there still a reward out for that one?
I think that one's all settled. I think that was put to bed with Reggie.
Okay. Well, these are the kind of stories that Neil tells. And if you listen to our latest episode, Sean asked him about the time he took the the caviar stairway to heaven, which was a pricey evening out. But he's also a gentleman, so he's willing to pop for a good time. But Neil, what are some of the stories that you look back on and say, these are my favorites, or I can't believe this actually happened?
The empty rent den?
Oh, that was fun. That was fairly recent. I remember when, you were very kind talking about my age. Bill Leitner, who was a long-time reporter, he was there
legend
40-some years at the Free Press, who retired, I think in December,
just last
January.
year.
Yeah, and walked up to me in the hall of our office. He said, I figured out, with me retiring, you're the oldest one here. And I said, fuck you.
Yeah.
But
Mick McCabe.
That's true. Yes.
Who's now gone too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
He just retired, but
yeah, so now it's
for the last 6-7 months, you were not the oldest one. It was Mick.
Okay. Well, we got to bring Mick back because he's I remember when the Renaissance Center was this teeming city within a city that was absolutely obscure. You couldn't find anything in there. It was the most poorly designed building for navigation that I've ever seen, been in, read about. It's like I knew how to get off the get off at the People Mover station and find my way to Olga's.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like there was a trail of breadcrumbs. It was the only way.
Or Snackers, I believe.
Did you get the Euro?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so I went, now it's in the news again. And, you're talking about the oligarchs who kind of watch over Detroit, and Dan Gilbert wants to, as part of this plan to knock down a couple of towers of the Renaissance Center, turn a couple of the other towers into, condos or apartments. Which is not a bad deal if you're Dan Gilbert. I mean, it's and
you get $250 million in tax breaks. Yeah, that helps.
That's the part that I think stops everybody. But I can understand why he's in favor because let's see, it brings more people downtown to populate the businesses in the buildings that he owns, and there's 2 fewer high-rise competitors for all his office space.
Right.
So, this makes a certain amount of sense. But anyway, so I just thought I'm going to wander around and see who's at the Renaissance Center and just kind of get a feel of the place.
Was there anyone there?
There was there was almost nobody. There used to be this food court that was, jammed every day. There were 2.
They had 2 of them. They had 2 food
they
courts.
Had one in the other building.
Yes.
And they're now down to 1 food court, and the 1 food court is down to 2 restaurants, a Burger King and a Coney.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I was, was there anyone there? I was watching a woman clean up in this, sort of empty hallway, and she had one of those trash buckets metal buckets at the end of a stick that you scoop things. Every time she slapped it down on the floor, it echoed.
Man.
People say, what kind of details should you look for? And you're great at details too. What kind of, as are you? But what, Sean, but what kind of details do you look for? sometimes they just echo in your ear and you're just aware enough to write it down.
But that's what I like about your stories, the column that you do, because we've all read stories about what Gilbert's doing with the Ren-Sen, what's going to happen to the Ren-Sen, but you actually go there to see what's happening at the Ren-Sen as opposed, on a micro level. And you did the same thing last week with Tesla. I mean, we can read about Tesla and Cybertruck selling, and I'm just surprised this wasn't a bigger story, but you found or went to the lot where all these Cybertrucks are basically parked, ones that the dealership nearby can't off-sell. And I like that because it puts a real story to all these numbers and things you read elsewhere in the news. And Neil got me good on it because the headline was something about, you made it think like you were going to turn your tide on a Cybertruck. But what's your opinion on the Cybertruck now?
Well, like I said, I'd see them drive by and I thought, this is not enormously attractive. And then I was there amid 37 Cybertrucks, which in turn were amid 186 random leftover rain-streaked, dusty, dirty Teslas looking for a home. And so I thought, I'm going to walk around, peek in the windows, reevaluate. And I was right the first time. That's a whole lot of ugly.
The Pontiac Aztek is looking better every day.
Aztek. Oh, that was another ugly car.
I want you to tell your stories, Neil, too. But the Renaissance thing reminded me. You went to the last Kmart, or was it the original Kmart in Garden City?
Oh my God, yes! When the original Kmart in Garden City, and I measure things by notepads. Now sometimes I actually carry a little tape measure with me, but at this incredibly dumpy, awful final Kmart in the metro, like one of the last ones in the metro area, they must have announced that they're closing a bunch of stores. So I went to the first one. It was freezing. I mean, they weren't paying a heating bill. The employees were wearing gloves indoors at the Kmart. There was a crack in the tile floor, and they had those square floor tiles.
Yeah.
I measured it. First off, I measured the floor tile next to my notebook, so I knew how many inches this floor tile was. I think it was 11 inches. Anyway, I walked it off. It was like a 250-foot crack in the floor at this dumpy, god-awful Kmart. Most of the shelves are empty. The ones that have stuff on it, it's completely jumbled. If you find what you're looking for, it's an act of God.
Yeah.
But, one of the things I tell people is get out of the office. Go look. When Mike Ilitch died, I went to the first Little Caesars, also in Garden City, the gateway to commerce in the United States. Yeah. It all flows through Garden City.
It's where the billions are born.
Yes.
And then somehow dissipate.
But again, you just go and describe what you see. Talk to a couple people coming in about Little Caesars, about Mike Ilitch. Usually you're going to find something.
I've always been a little sentimental about Kmart because it was Kresge's and you still see them around the old buildings with the red tile above the large front window. But after reading about the last Kmart in Garden City, I kind of felt like, I think it's about time. No one's going to miss this place.
Sometimes, you just outlive your usefulness. I mean, you do. The world changes. But
were you a Kmart guy, Mark?
Me? Oh my God, yeah. Yeah,
I associate him with
the frozen drinks.
I was just going to say, I associate him with ices.
Mashed potatoes, the lunch counter.
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah, they used to have lunch counters.
I never went to the lunch counter.
Oh,
but always, my mom would always make sure we got a frozen.
We got the icy. It was the icy.
Yep.
Yeah.
They have tropical fish. I mean, they had everything. Yeah. And people were telling me or maybe I got this out of the clips, when the first one opened, it was such a revelation, however long ago that was. People were renting trailers to carry all their Kmart purchases away on that opening weekend. They're driving out of the parking lot with stuff lashed to the roof of their sedans.
I think they started the layaway too, or were one of the early ones.
Layaway was huge at Kmart.
Now why would you need a layaway to buy something that costs 39 cents?
It's amazing what a different time all that was.
Yeah, different world.
But that's what you write about too. I feel like you're one of the few people that will write about media people in this market. They're just that beat seems to have disappeared because you wrote about when Devin left. You wrote about Guy Gordon when Guy Gordon got fired, and because you still really haven't heard much from Guy. So he didn't get fired; he stepped away, right? And I think that's
he did
the right way to put it.
I did not write the particular headline that ran on that story. I did not necessarily disagree with it. Guy wasn't happy about the term fired because there's a pejorative thing to it. It sounds like he did something wrong. And what they did was they said, okay, we want to cut your pay drastically and move you back to afternoons. And if you don't agree to that, you can't work here anymore. So I think you can make a case that he was fired, but you can't make a case that he did anything wrong. So he was concerned about that. But I think he was kind of looking forward. I know he was at the Mackinac conference.
Yeah.
But, Guy's got a pickleball court at his house. He's a tennis player. He's a golfer.
I think they own horses. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So
historically. Guy's going to be okay.
Have you written about pickleball?
I have not. Last summer was going to be my summer to try pickleball. And in April, I broke my ankle and poof, there went the summer. But maybe this summer. Have you started playing?
No, I've not played, but I have a friend that does out in the senior center out kind of past Pinckney. For those of you who know where Pinckney is, out
you make it sound very glamorous.
East and, no, but
that exotic.
I was actually thinking about. I don't want to go play, but I can't. My knees can't take it. But I'm going to go and check it out, and I may end up writing a little something about it. We'll see.
Yeah, I think you could. It's like there are already pickleball controversies because unlike tennis, it's kind of loud.
It's very loud.
If you can be near it.
I have two courts near me. You can hear it all the time. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me because it's a neighborhood that's pretty loud anyway, but you can always hear the pickleball.
Yeah, it just goes, there's a loud bonk when ball hits plastic that you don't get from a tennis court. So there's hostility to the great pickleball controversy.
Another local media story I wanted to ask you about is because it just seemed to come out of nowhere. You wrote the article about John Kleekamp and Mike Huckman, who were fixtures on, I remember them on Channel 7 forever. But what's interesting about the article is why? Like, why did that article come about? And were they, they were closeted when they lived here. Mm-hmm. And then, now they're out. Is it just something they wanted to reconnect, or did you seek them out? How did that come about?
I'd love to tell you it was my advanced reporting skills, but I knew those guys way back when. We're Facebook friends. And I saw on Facebook that they were selling their house and moving to San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. So I called them. First off, because I thought it was interesting. I thought it was, just, we've all thought, I think, well, maybe I'm just, extrapolating here from what my own thoughts. It's like, I want to live someplace warm.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to shovel snow again. And, politically, depending on who's in office, various people might say, I'm leaving and never coming back. And I just thought, okay, so that's kind of a universal. And it's just interesting that as recently as the early 1990s, which I think is when they left, or maybe it was all the way into 2000 by the time they both left, they couldn't admit they were a couple. Eventually, everybody at the station knew it. Everybody in the media knew it, but they couldn't, Well,
it's crazy too, and I'm glad you left in the article about Bob Talbert. And Talbert pretty much outed one of them, not by name, but outed them in a column in the paper, which you would never see that today.
No, kind of tacky, but it was just kind of Bob being Bob.
That's Bob.
But and the 2000s being the 2000s, I guess. But holy smokes, that you look back at it now and you think, what the hell were you doing there? And you also kind of want to look at the world and say, what the hell were you doing where these guys couldn't hold hands?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, Huckman always stood out because he wore the fedora.
Yes, it was
still does.
Hat.
Yeah.
And he still has a hat collection.
Okay. So he was unique as a guy in modern era wearing a hat. And John Kleekamp always kind of had these like a matinee idol, good-looking, tall, blonde guy. The glasses made him look a little more professorial, but I think no one ever would have guessed that they were a couple, and it's a shame that they never could have acknowledged that. That probably would have been the end of their TV careers.
But I mean, they didn't have any reluctancy to talk to you now, did they? I mean, they don't care. They've been gone, and
not at all. Like I said, they were happy to do it. They're thrilled with the move they're making in their life. You talk about people sort of existing under. I hadn't thought about this in decades, probably, until I wrote that column way back when. When very early in my tenure here, I was dating the assistant publicist at Channel 4. And this was long enough ago that TV stations not only had in-house publicists, publicists had an assistant. Big budgets back then.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Margie Reedy, who was an anchor at Channel 4, was dating Chris Hansen, who was either a reporter or I forget what he was, but he was at Channel 7.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt like they needed to be so under the radar about the fact that these people
worked for competitors.
Yes, and they were going out, and I don't think it was serious. It didn't last long, but there were a couple of times where my girlfriend and I went out with the two of them to be beards, basically.
Covers, yeah.
So that,
beards, straight beards for business.
Yeah. So I don't know that anybody was going to buy me dating Margie Reedy, but still, so apparently this was supposed to be plausible cover.
Or maybe you're giving Chris Hansen cover. You could have been way ahead of your time. But that's when we used to have gossip columnists, and when people used to write things like that. There was a legendary woman at the Free Press named Marge Jackson-Levin who would actually assign us to cover society parties and to tell people who showed up and what was being served and what was the entertainment.
Why did that go away? Was it just viewed as not being newsy? I mean, you would still think it would get clicks.
Yeah, in a pre-click world, it just people got bored with it.
Yeah.
And for one thing, the first few people to do that in this city were kind of hard-hitting and salacious. Matt Beer doing yours truly at the Detroit News, and he was absolutely savage. So then the Free
Press,
like
a page 6 type of
and he kind of liked hurting people. I think he was an odd guy.
He also found out later in life that his father was a very respected judge, had a second secret family, right?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And it was all exposed because his father was very harsh on a woman. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Neil. I'm trying to conjure this from the back of my mind. His father had been very harsh on a woman who had appeared before him for some sort of family matter, I think, and she started digging into it and says, lo and behold, this hard-ass judge, it turns out he's got 2 families.
Yes, and I don't know how you could, I don't have...
Sounds exhausting.
No,
I don't have time for my own.
Oh, really? It's like, we all know people who cheat on a spouse and maybe do it repeatedly. It's like, that's so much effort.
Yeah.
My knees couldn't take it.
My wife jokes about getting a sister wife. My wife talks about getting a sister wife like Mormons do to help out around the house. I'm like, I don't want to deal with 2 of you.
Yeah.
I can barely handle one of you. I don't want another one around.
Having a place to go to relax, to get away from your family sounds really good until the other place you're going to, they're just as big a pain in the ass. That's why we have bars.
Yes.
You don't need another family. You need a good bartender. Have you thought about compiling some of your favorite stories over the years and doing kind of a greatest hits type of thing?
I have because, we know a lot of authors. Heck, you are one.
More of a plagiarist, actually. I'm not sure the Kwame Sutra qualifies as intellectual property, but
hey, it's in bookstores. It counts. And people ask me all the time, and you guys probably get this also, are you working on a book? Are you working on a screenplay? And they're disappointed when I say no. But the fact is, I don't really want to write a book. There's nothing inside me burning to get out and become a book. I just want to do the book signings. That part would be fun.
Well, the travel, of course.
Meeting people, yeah.
You want the travel and the excuse to go to whatever newest restaurant.
Yeah, there you go.
And talking about the stories too, you get to kind of relive them. And it sounds like with Reggie Harding, you not only wrote about him, but you kind of followed his, I hesitate to say career, but his arc, his tragic arc.
Yes, the legend of Reggie. But yes, I have been approached a couple of times about basically doing a greatest hits album again in the halcyon days of the news and free press. They would publish those greatest hits albums. Right. There was a Bob Talbert book. Neil Shine had a book.
That's Mitch's first couple, right? Live album.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, now I'd have to go out and scare up a publisher and all of that. But again, it's, figure out which stories and columns to put in and, just write an intro and boom, I'm doing book signings. So now that you mention it, I might get on that.
Yeah. Is there any one story where you say, this is one I want people to see again, that I want to have more closer to immortality than it would have from somebody rifling through old pages of the paper?
That's a great question. It's almost like you ask them for a living in various venues. But yeah, there are a few where I've thought either this person is so interesting or, the simple moral, just people being kind to each other or people being bastards to each other. One of my favorites was about a guy named Norman Shy. And this was fairly short. It was only 600-700 words, I think. But this was a guy who he sold supplies, books and paper supplies and stuff to the Detroit public schools. And he and some principals and administrators figured out that if he overcharged for supplies and never delivered them, he could make a whole bunch of money and kick it back to them. And meanwhile, it's Detroit public schools. It's not like
there's no fat. Okay. Yeah. This is not like he's not Robin Hood here. He's robbing in the hood, but that's not the same thing.
Yes. And like Mark said, get out of the office, go someplace. He had pled guilty. He was about to be sentenced. And I went out and looked. He had a site condo in Franklin with a little bubbling river in back and this incredible manicured landscaping out front. And he had downsized from, like a $5 million home in Farmington Hills to this $2 million site condo in Franklin. And I just went and stood out there, described those surroundings and what he had done, and then went to one of the schools where the principal had pled guilty and where, he had literally robbed these kids of pieces of their education and, with the abandoned houses across the street with the doors kicked in. I was really proud of that one. And I'm still very glad I did it. I'm sure he's out of prison. I hope he's broke and miserable.
Yeah. And
well, and he dragged principals down with him because they helped with it.
Yeah. And a question that I asked in a follow-up column when the principals all started to get sentenced, either this guy was an incredible judge of bad character and all the dozen school officials, who I think one or two went to trial, the rest just, hands up, I'm guilty. Either he only approached larcenous people who said yes, or he approached a bunch of people who said, nah, not for me, and didn't turn him in.
Yeah, didn't say anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always wondered about that.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a scary thing. Neil, before we let you go, and you can find Neil's work in the free press, it's only $1 a month to subscribe, so it's well worth it. Neil's in there a couple times a week, making me look bad, but
his columns are a lot shorter than yours too. That's crazy how that works.
Yeah, but they're a lot better. It's
well, maybe that's not a coincidence. To Mark's point.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Helper. I didn't know you want to get involved in a discussion.
Cut them in half.
When you came in, you said you had a Sly Stone story, and Sly from Sly and the Family Stone is now the Rock of Ages. But
yes, poor Sly is deceased. It's a wonder he made it to 82.
Mm-hmm.
Sly partied hard. Sly was a regular customer and aficionado of some of the leading exports of places like Colombia and Bolivia.
Oh,
Big time.
okay.
Big time.
And so Albert Brooks, the actor, director, comedian, told me once, and it's not like we chat all the time. This was like my only conversation with Albert Brooks, but screamingly funny guy and very cool. And way back when Sly was at the apex of being, Sly and the Family Stone, he's on tour. And they hire Albert Brooks to open for him.
Oh my God!
Well, it's almost
Who did that?
Yeah, it's almost never a good idea to have a comedian opening for a rock star. It's just not what people want to see. It's really not what the Sly and the Family Stone crowd wants to see.
And Albert Brooks is kind of a droll comedian.
Yeah, dry.
That's just it. If it was Gallagher and he's out there with his hair on fire, breaking stuff, maybe he could hold their attention.
Yeah.
But he comes out, he's the opener, he's prepped, he's been working on his act, he's been polishing, and it's killed at comedy clubs in LA. Yeah. And he goes out and he's got 45 good solid minutes. And it's like within 5 minutes, people are throwing things.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here, whoa, they don't want any part of it. So as this tour goes on, he says his act, it just got shorter and shorter. He went 45, 35, 25. Finally it's, hi, I'm Albert, enjoy the show. And he just gets the hell out of there before he starts getting hit with stuff. Well, the tour manager comes to him one day in the hotel in Tacoma. It's like, 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours before the show. And he said, Albert, I'm just wondering, how much material do you have? And he said, well, normally when I play a club, I got this tight 45 minutes. No, if you were going to expand it, what would you do? Oh, I could throw in some old stuff. I could probably get an hour. And no, if you were really just going to empty the vault, do everything, and they said they're in Tacoma and they're just chatting. He says, if you were going to do everything, how much could you do? Oh, God, I don't know. I could maybe get it up to an hour and 15, hour and 30. Why? It finally dawns on him. Why are you
Sly
asking?
is not here.
The manager says, well, Sly's running a little late.
A little late. He is always running a little late.
and Brooks says, well, where is he? The manager says, Ohio.
That is Sly Stone. That's what he was known for a while, was not showing up.
Oh wow, that's almost like marching a guy off to a firing squad.
Oh yeah,
he knows in the first minute they're going to be raving at him, but after an hour and 15 minutes,
well, what is the plan? I mean, you're not even sure Sly's going to show up. You just don't want to return the money.
Yeah.
Can you really get him from Columbus, Ohio to Tacoma, Washington in three and a half hours? I don't think that dog's going to hunt.
No. Well, did Brooks do it? Did he pull the fire alarm and get the hell out of there?
I think they wound up canceling the show.
Yeah, it sounds like a good move. Well, Neil, hopefully the show goes on for many, many more years. For you at the Free Press, we're grateful that you're back. Neil's spent some time at the Detroit News, where I think he actually wrote the No Elric Zone column when George Cushingberry tried to institute a ban on me in City Hall. That was a classic. But Neil's in the Free Press two times a week generally. He's a lot like Sean, only good. So, but you can get both of them at the Free Press. It's just $1. So
thanks, Neil.
Hey, thanks, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, guys.
Good to see you.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?